This is KUTV Primetime News with Irene Mwangi.
Alright, many thanks for staying tuned. It is time for our discussion tonight, and in our discussion we'll be focusing on the hashtag Stop Loaning Kenyans. It has been an uproar in the social media, Kenyans raising an outcry concerning the appetite of the government in terms of borrowing. Joining us tonight is Mr. Vincent Kimosop, who is an economist. Many thanks indeed, Mr. Kimosop, for joining us.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Many thanks indeed for making time for this particular discussion. Now, the IMF approved 255 billion shillings as a loan to Kenya in terms of helping the country during this time of COVID-19 and the impact that it has brought into the country. But a section of Kenyans are not quite okay with that particular move. From where you sit, do you think it was right for the government to borrow more money, given that they had already reinstated some of these tax measures? Was the loan really necessary at this particular time?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share and to speak on this topic. I think you have to look at it in two ways. Mm-hmm. There is the issue of the loan, there is the issue of the timing, mm-hmm. and then there is also the issue of the context.
All right.
You can be able to have a good conclusion if you look at those three things. Mm-hmm. So on the issue of the loan, mm-hmm. There is nothing wrong with borrowing. Actually, governments are empowered legally to borrow, and you borrow when you do not have enough resources to attend to your needs. Mm-hmm. So borrowing on its own is not a problem.
Right.
Then number two is also the issue of the context. We are in a difficult time, a time of a pandemic, mm-hmm. Where the economy has shrunk, mm-hmm. Revenue collection has been going down, mm-hmm. and as a result, you do not need to be a skyrocket scientist to realize that the government has no option but to borrow to meet part of its needs. Mm-hmm. Now, the final part of the issue I've pointed out on the context, mm-hmm. is where the problem is.
All right.
Because this loan is coming after one was acquired from the World Bank.
Yeah.
We are told it's going to go towards COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And as you know very well that we've had reports in the recent past about how abuses happen. Mm-hmm. KEMSA, there's been no accountability out of that. So the Kenyans are mad, not because of the loan, mm-hmm. but it's because of the abuses that the loans or past experience has been. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would talk as an analyst about this issue.
All right. Now, what the National Treasury is saying concerning why they took that particular loan is because of four things that they have pointed out, which include scaling up the fight against COVID-19, reduce debt, have governance reform, and support financial stability. From where you sit and looking into some of the strategies that they have put in place for this particular loan, do you think it was warranted, looking into what they have pointed out as the reason why they borrowed this particular loan?
Yeah, I said yes. The answer is yes. It is borrowing to address those needs that is warranted. And the truth of the matter is that we all know we are in a pandemic, we're in a difficult time. Mm-hmm. I think I want to take us back to the problem.
All right.
That because of the past abuses and lack of transparency and accountability, that is where the problem is. And if you really want to have a proper diagnosis, mm-hmm. Then you have to isolate the issues very clearly and see where the problems are. And the problem is on the issue of accountability.
Sure.
When you even look at our debt to GDP ratio and compare to other countries, the US, for example, has just borrowed $1 trillion. And $1 trillion is USD. Is not small money to fight the pandemic, to finance and get businesses back. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it from that perspective, you would appreciate that borrowing in itself is not a problem.
Right.
The issue is how this money is accounted for, the involvement of key institutions, one of them being among Parliament, mm-hmm. and also a broader consultation, and also just ensuring that there is enough information. Are we also living at a time whereby Kenyans are becoming more literate?
Yeah.
This information is also being put out in the public domain. I was checking this morning the websites of the World Bank and the IMF.
Right.
This information is publicly available. And it's also important that Kenyans are becoming conscious about the impact of the decisions of government, that they know ultimately they're the people to borrow. Sorry, they're the people who are going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And when you see such issues galvanizing a country and attracting the kind of discussions that we see online, for me, that's a very positive thing that then calls for accountability, or particularly on the part of the executive, specifically the National Treasury, so that it can be accountable. It can provide as much details as concerned, because if they're borrowing for Kenyans, they should have nothing to hide. I think, as I pointed out to you, what disappoints Kenyans is, for example, look at the stories that have been on the headlines based on what happened with KEMSA. It can be very disheartening, demoralizing, when you hear that more loans are being acquired when the past ones have not been accounted for fully.
All right. Now, I'm sure you've seen this, that Kenyans on social media are accusing the IMF of aiding corruption for giving out this particular loan. They have already started an online petition, of course, to stop this particular move by the government. Do you think the exercise will bear fruits, or is it an exercise in futility, the online petition that is being championed by a section of Kenyans to stop this particular loan from IMF?
I am part of some work that's currently ongoing on really looking at strategies on public debt management in the African continent in the next 5 years. And one of the things that fascinates me is the innovation and the opportunity that the public space, the opening up, the digital platform, social media is giving in terms of enhancing accountability and ensuring transparency and accountability on public debt discourse. So for me, it is not an exercise in futility. It is just the appreciation that the space is broadening for fiscal and civic engagement. It should be encouraged. We need more responsiveness on the part of the responsible institutions. On the part of the World Bank and the IMFs, these are banks, and their business is to give loans, and they deal with governments. So IMF, of course, I'm sure, as in their engagements, will therefore be calling for informing the governments to be more open and accountable. But also, it's also need to appreciate that there is a changing nature in the character and how debt is also shifted. We may be moving back to the 80s that we were here with the IMFs and the World Bank, but there are also new entrants into the space. Right. So all that is it's helping us to really appreciate that accountability and transparency is important, and it may not have the much. I would tell Kenyans just to manage their expectations, but it's something that should be encouraged and promoted.
All right. Now, Kenya's public debt has ballooned by more than 1 trillion in the last 1 year. That is between March 2020 and March 2021. All this money has been said to help in the fight against COVID-19 and, of course, to cushion Kenyans. Now, you have said the problem is not borrowing. The problem is the question of accountability. Now, in the period of that 1 year that the government has borrowed almost 1.2 trillion, have we seen value for money in this particular borrowing appetite?
Those are two questions. So I don't know, where do I start in terms of the amount and then the issue of value for money. Right. So as again I said, in terms of the amounts, looking at the issue of sustainability, from where I look at it is that it's still manageable considering the timing and the circumstances that we're in, because it's just that it takes our debt to GDP ratio to approximately just slightly below 70%.
All right.
There are countries that are worse off. Our problem is not even the debt to GDP ratio. It is when you look at this, the nature when you look at also the like you have Eurobond, we went to the to the market, so we're borrowing in dollars, so volatility. The other problems, even size not being really the major issue. So the concerns that I would point out is that there is need to have a broader engagement on the management, that is where are we getting our debt, what is it going to, like one of the problems why our debt is not productive is that most of the amounts went to investments that are not bringing returns.
Sure.
We built the SGR. That alone took close to 800 billion. We are yet to get the needed returns out of the SGR. So when we have unproductive debt, that is where the problem is, because it becomes like a sunk cost. So from where I look at it is that if we have a prudent management of our economy, a speedy recovery, deal with corruption, and then also have fiscal consolidation, because when you begin borrowing even to finance discretionary spending, then that should worry us. I would also point out that we have a problem of the effectiveness of our oversight institutions, particularly Parliament. Like now, there is a conversation already happening on raising the debt ceiling, and you see that our representatives are not playing the role that they should be playing effectively on the management of public debt.
All right. Now, you pointed out on the question that I wanted to ask concerning the move by the National Treasury to present a proposal to Parliament to have the ceiling raised from 9 trillion. What does it portend to the country should Parliament approve this particular proposal by the National Treasury, given that the oversight bodies are really failing, especially in Parliament? What does the ceiling moving from 9 trillion to, say, 12 trillion, I beg your pardon, mean to Kenyans?
It will just mean that the government will, for it to finance its budget, the government will have to, it has more leeway and room to be able to go and borrow more. So I think that is the direct meaning of lifting the debt ceiling. The room is between 9 trillion to 12 trillion. Now, in terms of the impact of that is that, of course, now it means more money based on our domestic resource mobilization efforts will go towards repaying this. Now, when you have more money going towards repaying loans, it will affect money that's available for critical services like education, healthcare, and even security. So it will affect the quality of our public service. And you can see even the way we are already moving closely to what we call now the Wall Street consensus. We have moved from Washington consensus to Wall Street consensus. What do I mean? The Wall Street consensus is that there is no much money that's available in the public, and for development, privatized development. That's why you're seeing now to call the public-private partnership. The road that is from Westlands all the way to JKIA is an example of public-private partnerships. The problem with this is that when we privatize public problems, I can assure you that the solutions are not sustainable. Unfortunately, we are headed there. There is no much discussion happening there, yet we should be having such discussions so that Kenyans are aware what are the implications of the decisions that we're taking based on what is being done to address the fiscal deficits that the government is experiencing.
All right. Now, Mr. Kimosop, some economists have said that with this particular trajectory, it will come to a time whereby the country will not be able to borrow anymore. Some have said that this particular regime is loaning Kenyans to these banks and countries that have given us money. At what point do you think that it will be the red zone? Are we at the red zone yet? Is it time that maybe
No, we are not. No, that's more political. That's not economic. And I usually encourage in my conversations that let's be driven by data and the evidence. The only problem is that we are already starting to feel we are on the we are debt. The impact of debt crisis is it's here with us. You can see clearly that liquidity is a challenge, and you cannot blame everything on COVID.
Yeah.
Is it manageable? The answer is yes, according to my view. It calls for boldness on the part of leadership. It calls for accountability, share information, inform Kenyans as it is, and also accountability for the money that you've borrowed. When you're talking about more borrowing, when you've just taken people through what we've seen in KEMSA, then it can be very disheartening.
Sure.
Because ultimately, these are monies that will be paid by Kenyans. And I'm very happy that the conversation on public debt is now on the public square, because for a long time, the reason why some of these issues were not able to get the kind of airtime that we're getting today was our discussion was just narrowing to tribalism, which community, and yet critical things like this were not getting the kind of airtime that we are having today. So we need more of this conversation, moving from the to our headlines. You can imagine, even with this conversation, tomorrow morning in our headlines, in some of our leading dailies, you are in the media, you will be hearing about politics and 2022. Yet really critical and important conversations like this is where our energies should be at.
All right. Now, in the 2021 budget policy statement that was passed by Parliament, it recommends a budget of 14.39 billion to the IEBC to conduct a referendum. Now, looking at our country, the economy as it is this really a priority at this particular time? Should we shelve the reforms that you're pushing for and focus on reviving the economy at this particular moment?
Economically, it is not. Politically, it is. So I don't know, do I talk politically as a political analyst, or I talk like an economist? Because
an economist.
On the economic front, it does not make sense, because we should be focusing on really creating opportunities for young people. Many Kenyans are hurting. We're even borrowing. But on the political front is that 2022 is here with us. We are less than, 18 months to an election.
Sure.
And actually 16 months to an election. And already succession, if it wasn't for COVID-19, even things, we would have seen more drama on the political front. In fact, we've just been slowed by COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I would say on the political front, I can understand people are positioning themselves because the current president term is coming to an end. But all this really, economically, our energies should be towards growing and making the economy work for everybody.
All right. Now, finally, as we wind up, any kind of loan brings burden to the middle and the low class. Can there be any reasonable alternative ways of bridging the debt to the GDP ratio?
Yes, you do what you call fiscal consolidation. So you look at your budgets, what are the things that are not important, and then you also reduce what you call leakages and wastes, which other people call it corruption. The other thing that also is important is the need to really strengthen what you call domestic resource mobilization. Get everybody to pay their share of their taxes. And then finally is also to look at, when we look at our tax base, we need to broaden our tax base.
Right.
There are many people who are outside the tax bracket who need to be onboarded into the tax bracket. With that, when we have what you call domestic resource mobilization, and then now you have value addition for what you're producing. Because why debt becomes a problem is when you have a problem of your foreign exchange, which is an issue of trade, and then industrialization. So we need to have a broader conversation on how to enhance domestic resource mobilization, and make the economy working, and more people to be more productive, so that then we can be self-sufficient as a people. That is what has made other countries, even during lockdown and COVID-19, to be effective, because they have been able to, they're able to mobilize resources domestically effectively, and they're able to traject through the current challenges that other countries are going through, which we are also going through.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Vincent Kimosop, for making time and giving us a perspective concerning Kenya's public debt burden.
You're welcome.
All right. That has been Mr. Vincent Kimosop giving us a perspective concerning the issue of debt in the country. Is it manageable? He says yes, but we wait to see how the National Treasury will be able to manage the appetite of borrowing here in the country. We're taking a short break. We'll be back with more on what is happening.